Hello, my name is Sid Espinoza. I'm the former mayor of Palo Alto and the director of philanthropy and corporate citizenship at Microsoft. And tonight we have a real treat. We have Michael Killen here, a renowned and important artist who has created an incredible work of art behind us here, Resilience. And we're going to hear from him tonight, his inspiration, what got him to be an artist, and what he's trying to communicate through this painting. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. Why don't we start with your background? What brought you to artistry, and how long have you been an artist?
I didn't plan to be an artist. Actually, my entire life I had very little interest. I was always in the corporate world, helping to articulate big issues for business and develop models to help corporate executives think clearly about it. But I had a full knee replacement one day. I walked into the hospital and I came out in a wheelchair, and it took 7, 8 years of operations to be able to walk again and for the pain to go away. And as the last operation I was recovering from it, I went to an art critique. That's all I could do at those days. I would sit in the art critique and watch artists show their work. And the leader of the group one day said, "Look, I want you to come to my studio. I want to get you started in painting." I said, "I'm not interested." I finally went. I said, "I don't even want to paint anything." I wasn't really feeling well. He put a couple of canvases, and I went like that, and instantly it spoke to me.
Let's talk about the issues that you've been addressing, because when I talk to elected officials, when I talk to artists, when I talk to executives, they are blown away by the fact that you're taking on, through your art, some of the most important issues facing the planet, facing our community, our country. And so how did you get there? How did you get inspired to take on these difficult issues and express them through art?
First of all, in the business world, I was always looking at big issues, okay? And then when I started to paint, I heard the term climate change, and I started to think about the future of civilization. And I started to paint some of them, and then all of a sudden, a wealthy benefactor, a really strange woman, called me up and said, "I want you to make paintings to save the environment, and I want you to make paintings that will last 1,000 years." I took that challenge, and I decided I better quickly understand what climate change was, and that led me to get involved with Steve Schneider, as well as Stanford people. And I started to make climate change paintings, and then I decided to look at something that had more pragmatic, a solution, and had economic benefits to and that was sustainability. So I moved on to sustainability. And then I said to myself, I've always liked to look at a particular thing in a larger context. So I started looking at climate change in terms of human rights, in terms of economic gap, in terms of other things. And I always believe in putting something in a context to really understand it. And so I just kept expanding.
Well, speaking of context, before we start walking through what we see in this painting behind us, what's the context for what you think are the important issues facing the world or the planet today? Help us understand what you think those issues are.
I think on everyone's mind is the sustainability of America, and some people also think about sustainability of the planet, but if we focus on America, I think we'll go a long way in doing some good things. So when I think about sustainable America, I think about the threats and opportunities, and one of those threats is the widening economic gap. Another one is, and probably the biggest one, it's the concentration of wealth and power. That is a great threat to our nation, our liberty, to all of us, to big corporations, everyone. And then I also think about terrorism, and I think about climate change, and a couple of others. And so I sensed that we've been in an era where sustainability is what was going to save us or keep a lot of things from hitting us and hurting us. But then I decided we're now entering a new era, the era of resiliency, where we have to be prepared to receive hits, perturbations, and to be able to spring back. So I decided to make the painting behind us to bring attention to corporations, to governments, to universities, and other sectors of our civilization, that it's now time to recognize we have to become more resilient as people, individuals, companies, communities, etc., corporations. So that's what's led me to make this painting.
That's great. It's great to understand that context. Why don't we start walking through the painting and what inspired you. Before we get into that, talk to me a little bit about the mediums that you use. What is this painted on, and what kinds of paints do you use?
Well, I get all my advice from university art. My background is very limited when it comes to a lot of those things. I only deal with acrylic and collage. So this painting is only acrylics and cutouts from magazines, newspapers, photos I've taken or other people have taken.
And it looks like there are 4 separate panels, but they are put together for the piece. Do you paint them all separately?
No and yes. Before I start something like this, I have an idea. It's a story, and just like if you're writing a book, at the beginning, you have an idea what that story might be, but then as soon as you get into it, it starts to morph and change. Same is true with a painting. I see a story that I'm going to write, and I actually see myself as I do it, giving speeches. This is I know you're Microsoft. This is like a PowerPoint. I'm making a PowerPoint presentation.
It's great. Well, let's dive in and understand the story. First, I think even people standing far away will see this infinity symbol that weaves throughout. So what is that about, and why is it such a dominant feature of the painting?
Before I made this painting, I made a painting called Sustainability, also large, 24 feet. And when I worked on that, I thought about what is the symbol the world has accepted for sustainability, and the world hasn't accepted one. So I decided the infinity sign would be the most apropos, meaningful, effective symbol. And I didn't use it. I used the little ones, infinity and the big sustain. Here I decided to really present the infinity signs so that you have to be blind not to see this. And in making this painting, I consider the infinity sign, the gold, as the sustainability of America. That is on my mind. That is my guide as I made this entire painting. That is the sustainability of America, and it is being challenged, the sustainability of America, all the way through this painting except to the end. And at the end is where help comes.
Well, let's start at the beginning of the story then, and then we can understand some of the places where the infinity symbol is being broken up. When we start here, why don't you start us right in this first panel?
Okay, well, over here, it's cave art from the Lascaux Caves, 20,000 years ago. I put cave art throughout this whole painting because I want everyone to start to see the long view. And when we see the long view, we can see ourselves in it, and maybe we'll make some wise decisions about what we're doing today and what we're doing tomorrow. And here we have we the people. And as Anna Eshoo, a congresswoman representing California, said, the Constitution is the DNA of the nation. And I want to remind everyone that the Constitution is very important, and there is a battle going on with different groups in this country trying to state what our DNA really is, primarily so they can advance their position. And in some cases, those positions are good for the country. In some cases, they're not good for the country. So I wanted to bring attention that there is this focus, and we should be careful on our guard when we listen to people citing the Bible. We have to be careful what they say. And as we go forward, what we have over here is, as you know, around the world, there are millions and millions and millions, and there are even more coming, people who hardly make any money. They can't get an education, and there is a smaller and smaller group of people who have much of the wealth. So it's the economic gap. And in the United States, in the last 30 years, that gap has spread considerably. And no society, no business, no one can really prosper, even the wealthy, if there is this great chasm.
And tell me how that's represented here, because I see noses and eyes, and then I see a Gucci symbol. And so what are we looking at?
Down here is you and me compared to the Middle East, a lot of Asians and people in South America. We have the wealth. This is the wealth. That's the Gucci symbol. And these, they have diamonds on, and they're living the good life. But around the world, and even in this country, there are many, many people who are disenfranchised. They have not been able to get an education. They cannot work, even though they try to work. And they are, today, with all the internets and television videos, they see what you and I have. And they want it. And for example, in Europe, Europe is surrounded by a lot of depressed communities, and those communities, they're just going to flow over the border and disrupt those nations. So I'm trying to point out here, you notice these folks do not have faces. They are so poor, they don't even have a face. And they're coming down here, you can see their hands, and when you're hungry, they'll do anything to get the food for their children and themselves. And so I'm trying to bring attention to the need for us to do what we can to close that economic gap that really has spread in the last 30 years.
And of course, you can see an erosion of the infinity sign because of that disparity of wealth really causing a breakup in that continuum.
Yes, and you see, that's why I have that and this and that, and you know, the breakup gets a little more severe as we move along.
And I see it then connecting into the flag, and why don't we talk about what's happening here?
The flag, I just want to keep reminding everyone that the flag is symbolic of what a great democratic country we have, and we have to guard it and be vigilant and do what we can to keep this country strong. Now, what we have down here is 9/11. This is symbolic of terrorism. There is no way to prevent more strikes. And so I just wanted to bring attention that terrorism is going to be up on the upswing. It's always going to be with us. And this is how I represented the Twin Towers. And over here, that's a little reminder of what happened on that fateful day. The eye is there to remind us, you know, there are folks looking at us, and we have to look at ourselves to try to do things that try to mitigate things so that we do not present ourselves in the world in such a way that we encourage these things. But then over here, you know, we're building a new World Trade Center. And I believe the best symbol for resilience is a spring. And so I'm starting to introduce that there. And a spring is because we have to prepare so that when we are hit, we spring back. And corporations everywhere now are looking into making sure their corporation, their supply chains, their customers, their investment, their bonds and stocks that they offer to the public, to the investors, can spring back if a rogue trader does something, or a bank defaults, or a plane takes out part of the financial system, that their investments can spring back. It's an important quality. So I'm starting to introduce the spring as the symbol that we need to consider we all need to be more resilient. And I started this painting about 7 months ago. I can't exactly tell you why I decided it's time for a painting on resilience, except that I looked where sustainability, that quality and that effort isn't enough to keep the challenges that are coming. The fact of all these interconnected networks now make things happen so fast, and advances in technology allow bombs and little tiny things, and so there's many things going to happen. Okay, so we have to move along a bit.
I have to tell you, this part of the painting to me really speaks to me. It is so violent in it, and I think you captured really the tragedy of 9/11. But here you're talking about this spring of hope. It becomes part of the infinity symbol. It starts to blend in and really takes us as a shift. We start to see a shift, and we move now to probably the most dramatic part of the painting. I think people would agree that this part is catches your attention right away, and you're trying to figure out what is being said here. So why don't you talk to us about this?
I like that you find this to be a big part of this painting, because a couple of weeks ago, Anna Eshoo was having a big meeting, and she said the #1 threat to our liberty, to the nation, is the concentration of wealth and power. I sat there in the audience and I said, that's what this shows. This is a bull or any other kind of big animal, or whatever you want it to be, and it is charging through the sustainability of America. It's distorting it, and its hoofs are stepping on you or me, a voter. This person is out to place a ballot in a voter's box, and this hoof is stepping on the person and the American flag, and this concentration of power has the effect of shredding our flag, our country, and then twisting you and me into knots. And when we're in knots, we can't be productive. It's so hard. And so Anna and other groups were saying they're working to have an amendment, I think Amendment 26 to the Constitution, to reverse the Supreme Court's decision of Citizens United, so that a corporation does not have the same rights as you and me, and so that people cannot take a tremendous amount of wealth, and their vote becomes much more important than 1 million of us.
As we continue along, why don't we shift and look back this way. So we see you've gone now from a disparity of wealth into terrorism, now talking about, why don't you talk to us about what's happening here as we move into the Capitol building, and what's happening here with the child and the Supreme Court?
All right, I think another threat, and it's an opportunity to our nation, is Congress. It's dysfunctional, it's broken, and the government is it's a resource. Just like corporate America is a great resource, and all the universities, and this is a resource that is dysfunctional. It will not address climate change. There's no one who can predict what decade Congress will address climate change, for example, and give us strong climate change solutions, and that's just terrible. So I'm depicting here a Congress, a threat to the United States that's so great that look at the huge hole I put in it, and you can see pieces of our sustainability falling apart. And then what I wanted to point out here is climate change, for example, is going to be very, very costly to us. We've built bridges, roads, buildings, the Freedom Arch in certain places based on our needs, the terrain, physical properties, whatever. But with climate change, where we built things in the past, the infrastructure, is not necessarily where the water is going to go, where we want it to. And so here I have water going under the feet of the Supreme Court judges, but mostly it's under the Freedom Arch. It's the Mississippi River in my mind. So I'm trying to say to everyone, it might be better, a stitch in time is better than 9 or whatever it is later on. And I have my dear sweet granddaughter Isabella there, because it was a photo where she indicates she is concerned about something. And if you speak to any of the young kids about climate change, a lot of them have heard it or heard about terrorism or something, and they get a little frightened. They're worried. And I have her in there because I want you, grandparents and other parents and other people to remember a lot of this is about the kids.
Well, speaking of sustainability and climate change, why don't you talk to me about this, as I can kind of guess what we're talking about here, but why don't you tell us what this symbolizes?
What if I say I'm getting tired? And what if you say what you think we have there?
Well, obviously we have a thermometer and we have a hammer here, both breaking through because of the heat, the thermometer scale, but also symbolically, obviously, through the infinity symbol as well, which we've talked about, really that entire idea of resilience through all of these different issues. But you know, it's thankfully, I think, because of some of the folks that you've identified here, this is an issue that the world is really starting to talk about. It's amazing that they weren't just a little while ago, but this is critical. So we're back to hope, and why don't you talk to us about what we're seeing here in a hopeful way? All
right, I will in a second. I want to say, with climate change and the thermometer and the hammerhead coming up, I didn't want to be so obvious and, you know, spectacular with all sorts of things, and I thought the hammerhead says it enough. We are going to get hammered, and I think we're seeing it every day now with all these storms and forest fires and whatever, and so I thought that would do that.
Yeah.
And population
growth is what we're talking about here. And I know we're short on time.
We're showing up
so
time.
I want to make sure you have time to talk about this.
So I think all these challenges are also business opportunities for everyone. And what we have to do is all the people in corporations and others have to try to understand the situation we're in, and we have to go back and lift up our liberty, the country, and bring liberty forward, address climate change, straighten out Congress. Don't ever vote for anyone that doesn't have a college education and has some progressive thinking and deal with the concentration of wealth and power. Keep working on terrorism. And the people have got to get elected officials that will address the disparity between people, and the country will continue to be sustainable.
Well, I think there's a reason why everybody's talking about your artwork. It is powerful. It's addressing the huge issues that our community is facing. So I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for giving me some time to spend with you this evening. It's been incredible. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank your corporation for being kind to display my work.